Rome didn't need chains first. It needed a sentence. If your mother is a slave, you inherit slavery, not as punishment, but as definition. A legal reflex so ordinary, nobody calls it violence. And that is the first trick of the empire. It makes brutality feel like paperwork. So here's the question Rome never asked out loud. How did the civilization that worshipped law turn pain into its most efficient product? And who profited from keeping it ordinary? Chronicles praise emperors and victories. I'm going to follow the infrastructure they don't put on statues, the rooms built for captivity, the rituals built for fear, and the job that let elites stay clean. Viewer discretion advised. If you value the historical record, subscribe. When the ledger closes, the bones still speak. You are born on an estate outside the city where Rome grows its wealth like a crop. From far away it looks calm. Fields, irrigation channels, a villa gleaming white in the sun. Up close, it's a machine that eats bodies slowly. People are sorted by usefulness. Food is measured like a ration for livestock. Sleep is permission. Silence is survival. Your mother is there, but not really. Not because she doesn't love you, because love is a liability in a system that treats humans as tools. She is returned to work, as if milk and grief are delays in production. You learn early that crying isn't a language the estate understands. It hears it as disobedience. There is a building for that lesson, not a metaphor. A structure with intent, an underground holding place for chained workers. Low air, damp stone, and a thin slice of light that doesn't warm anything. Windows placed too high to reach, so you can see daylight and still be trapped. That design matters. It tells you Rome did not simply allow cruelty. Rome engineered it. Cruelty with ventilation, cruelty with a floor plan. By the time you can count years, you can also count rules. Rule 1. You are not someone. You are owned. Rule 2. You can be moved without explanation. Rule 3. You don't have a future, only a use. Then comes the day the estate proves Rule 2. A visitor arrives. You know he's important because he's clean, in a way labor can't achieve. Clothes without sweat stains. Hands without calluses. The kind of calm that only power can afford. Guards straighten their backs like gravity just increased. Your owner smiles, warm, polite, almost kind, like a man about to convert a problem into profit. That night, you are lined up. Not accused, not questioned, selected. It's not dramatic. That's what's terrifying. Rome rarely needs to scream. It can ruin you quietly with procedure. A gesture, a nod, a transfer. You glimpse your mother at the edge of the torchlight. Her shoulders are shaking, but she fights her face into stillness because tears don't buy mercy. They buy punishment. She doesn't beg, not because she doesn't want to, but because she understands the arithmetic. Begging costs more than it earns. You are marched out at dawn. Dust in your throat, rope on your wrists, the estate shrinking behind you like it never happened. And for a moment, stupidly, dangerously, you believe the city might mean something else. Temples, courts, law, civilization. But Rome doesn't take you to a home. It takes you to a place where bodies are processed into obedience, where confession is manufactured, where fear is stored like Ron. And this is where you first hear the word that will poison your name before you even have one. Carnifex. Not soldier, not judge, not priest. The one who does what the state requires but pretends to despise. The man whose touch is considered filthy, whose presence is unwelcome, yet whose work makes everyone else feel civilized. In Rome, purity is a performance. Violence is the backstage crew. And you, born as a line item, are about to be trained into the empire's dirtiest tool. The first thing Rome teaches you is that cruelty doesn't have to be loud to be permanent. On the surface, the estate runs like a sermon about order. The villa is painted. The granary doors are sealed tight. The owner's accounts are neat. The overseer's whip is not a tantrum. It's a tool. And the fields? The fields are Rome's real temple. Wheat, olives, grapes, the holy trinity that keeps senators soft and soldiers fed. But there's a second estate beneath the estate. You discover it by smell before you ever see it. Wet stone, stale breath, iron that has been worn warm by human skin. The entrance is plain, almost shy, like a storage cellar. That's the point. If evil looks ordinary, no one asks questions. Down a narrow stairway, the air changes. It gets heavier. Every sound becomes a warning. Then you see the design. It's not a pit dug in panic. It's a room built on purpose. The ceiling is low enough to make tall men bow their heads without being told. The floor is packed earth and old moisture. Chains are bolted where chains are needed. And high up, too high, thin openings let in narrow strips of daylight. Just enough light to see what you are. Not enough to imagine leaving. You watch men stare at that slit of brightness, the way starving people stare at food, with devotion and hatred at the same time. This is where they put the difficult ones, the runaways, the fighters, the ones who talk too much, the ones who remind everyone else that a body can still choose to say no. Rome calls it management. The estate calls it security. The enslaved call it the place you go when you stop pretending. And that's what makes it so terrifying. It's not hidden because it's shameful. It's hidden because it's practical. The underground prison solves problems neatly. A chained worker can't disappear into the night. A chained worker can't organize. A chained worker can't be a person in the full sense of the word. He becomes labor with a heartbeat. That's the real product here. Not wheat. Not olives. Obedience. Obedience that can be predicted, scheduled, and counted. People love to imagine slavery as chaos. Drunken cruelty, random violence, masters who snap. That happens. But Rome's power wasn't built on snapping. It was built on systems that didn't need emotions to function. Food is one of those systems. There is never enough. Not because the estate can't afford it, because hunger is leverage. Hunger makes men compliant. Hunger makes you smaller. It makes you bargain with yourself. I'll take the beating if it means I can swallow something warm. You learn to chew slowly, to trick your stomach into believing the portion is larger than it is. You learn not to look at another child's mouth when he's eating, because envy becomes visible, and visibility is dangerous. Sleep is another system. You don't rest, you are stored. Bodies are stacked into corners. into rooms, into that underground place when the overseer wants to remind everyone that night isn't freedom. The estate doesn't fear your strength, it fears your silence, what you might plan when no one is watching. So, it keeps watching. Or it keeps you chained where watching becomes unnecessary. Then there's the third system, shame. Shame is the soft chain the empire uses when iron is inconvenient. It teaches the enslaved to blame themselves for wanting to live. It teaches them to lower their eyes before they're struck, to apologize before they're accused. Shame turns survival into gratitude. It creates the perfect captive, one who believes he deserves the cage. You watch adults become smaller over years, not physically, spiritually. They stop speaking in full sentences. They stop asking why. They stop calling each other by names. They start using functions. Bring water. Hold that. Move. A community dies when language dies. Rome understands this better than any philosopher who ever wrote about virtue. And your mother? Your mother is being reshaped right in front of you. She becomes two people, the woman who loves you and the worker who must not show it. You catch her eyes sometimes, a brief spark in the dark, and she looks away quickly like she's saving you from being noticed. Love becomes a contraband item. The estate doesn't need to beat it out of her every day. It only needs to punish it once, publicly, so everyone learns the price. So, you adapt. You swallow everything. Hunger, fear, names. You learn the estate's quiet math. Those who resist are sent below. Those who comply are kept above. Above is still hell, but it has air. That's the genius of the design. It creates competition among the trapped. It makes you grateful for a slightly larger cage. Years pass this way, measured in harvests, measured in scars, measured in the distance between you and the man you might have been. Your body grows into usefulness. Your hands become strong. Your face becomes blank. You become good at one thing, not being noticed. Then one afternoon, the estate breaks its own rhythm. A messenger arrives first. Then guards reposition. The overseer's voice shifts. Less casual, more careful. You feel it before you understand it. The estate is performing for someone. A visitor comes through the gate. Not a god. Not a soldier covered in glory. A man in clean fabric and controlled movements. Someone who carries authority without needing to raise his hand. The owner meets him as an equal. They speak like merchants, like colleagues, like men discussing weather, except their eyes keep sliding toward the workers like they're scanning inventory. That night, you are woken up by boots and a shouted order. Everyone stands. The air tightens. The guard points at a few bodies, yours included, and tells you to step forward. You don't know why. That's the point. Rome doesn't owe you explanation. It owes you function. You step out into torchlight. You catch a glimpse of the underground entrance as you pass, dark mouth of the estate's second face, and you realize something cold. You are not being punished. You are being reassigned. And the most frightening thing about that is how normal everyone makes it look. Because if a human life can be transferred this easily on a farm, what does the capital do with people when politics needs a lesson? In the morning, there is no speech, no announcement, no explanation, just rope, a list, and the quiet confidence of men who know the law is on their side. That's the first lie Rome teaches the world, that violence is a moment, a beating, a scream, a blade. In reality, Rome's cruelty is a route, a logistics chain, a series of doors that close behind you so smoothly you almost forget to resist. You are marched out with a handful of others, young enough to be shaped, old enough to be useful. The overseer doesn't look guilty, he looks efficient. Your owner doesn't avoid your eyes. He barely recognizes you as a person. He recognizes you as a solved problem. You try to memorize your mother's face as you pass the worker quarters. But she isn't there. Or maybe she is, somewhere behind wood and stone, forcing her breathing to sound normal. The estate doesn't allow farewell. Farewell makes people remember they had something worth stealing. Outside the gate, the world is wider and crueler than you imagined. Dust coats your tongue. The road is crowded with carts, livestock, soldiers, travelers, everyone moving as if motion itself is a kind of freedom. You learn quickly that movement isn't freedom when you don't choose the direction. The guards keep you in a line. They don't need to shout much. The rope does the talking. You pass shrines, milestones, roadside taverns, and little villages that smell like smoke and bread. And the strange part is this: nobody looks shocked. Nobody gasps. Nobody runs to help. A few glance at you with mild curiosity, the way they'd glance at a wagon of tools. Some smirk. Some look away. That's Rome's second lie, that people are naturally good until corrupted. Most people aren't cruel. They're practical. They learn what's normal. They learn what's safe. And they learn that a slave line on a road is not their problem. By night, you sleep on the ground while guards eat near the fire. You hear them talk about the city ahead, Rome, like it's a living creature, loud, hungry, dangerous, glorious. They speak its name with pride and irritation, like a man talking about a powerful relative who might also ruin him. On the second day, the skyline appears, dense, layered, impossible. Smoke rises in columns. The air thickens with the smell of people, sweat, oil, animals, waste, cooking, metal. Rome is not clean. Rome is powerful. And power doesn't smell like perfume. It smells like bodies in motion. As you enter, the world turns into noise. Vendors shouting prices, wheels grinding stone, dogs barking, children running, men arguing. Somewhere, a public crier announces something you can't quite catch. But the crowd reacts with laughter, like politics is entertainment here. You expect eyes to follow you, but they don't. Not for long. Rome has too many moving parts to stop for a single line of captives. That's what makes the city so lethal. It can swallow you without noticing. They take you through streets that change every few blocks. Narrow alleys where laundry hangs like tired flags. Wider avenues where columns and statues loom. You see temples and basilicas, marble that tries to convince you this place is righteous. And then you see the truth beneath the marble. Men sleeping under stairs, women selling bread and themselves, children with hollow cheeks staring like they've already learned the city's lesson. A guard tugs the rope and you stumble forward. You realize you've been staring too long. Then you reach the place that doesn't try to look holy. The building is heavier than the streets around it. more guarded, more deliberate. The door is not decorative, it is functional. This is where people go when the state stops negotiating. A guard speaks to another guard. A few words, a nod. And suddenly, you are not property from an estate anymore. You are delivered. You have crossed an invisible line from private ownership into public machinery. The empire has accepted your body into its workflow. Inside, the air changes again. It's cooler, stale, and layered with the sharp sting of old sweat and something metallic you can't name yet. The corridor is narrow enough to keep bodies close enough to keep panic contagious. And then you hear it. Not a scream. Not yet. Something worse. The sound of a person trying not to scream. A low, broken noise that refuses to become a full cry because full cries bring consequences. You are shoved into a holding space with others. Men with bruises. Men with shaved heads. Men who smell like fear and stubbornness. Some stare at the wall like it's a prayer. Some stare at you like they're deciding whether you're a threat or a symptom. A guard barks orders. You don't understand them all, but you understand the rhythm. Here, bodies move on command. Here, time is not yours. Here, you are not a child from a farm anymore. You are a piece in a city-sized apparatus. They assign you work almost immediately, because Rome does not waste new tools. You scrub, you carry, you fetch water, you learn which buckets are for cleaning and which buckets are for things nobody names. You learn which stains come up easily and which ones sink into stone like memory. And you notice something else. The people who give orders avoid touching certain doors. They stand back when those doors open, like the air itself might contaminate them. Even the guards, men trained for violence, become superstitious around the rooms where the real work happens. You ask no questions. Questions get you noticed. Days blur, then weeks. Then the routine forms. Noise in the morning, work all day, silence at night that feels like it's waiting to be interrupted. You become good at cleaning evidence. You become good at not existing. And that's when you hear the word again. Closer this time. Spoken with a mix of disgust and relief, like a man naming a disease that also solves his problem. Carnifex. You don't see him yet. You only feel the shift when he enters. Guards straighten without being told. Prisoners shrink into themselves. And the corridor seems to make room for a presence that belongs to the state's darkest necessity. You realize, with a cold clarity, why you were brought here. Not because Rome needs another worker, because Rome needs someone who can do violence on schedule, and carry the blame for it so everyone else can keep pretending they're civilized. And the moment you understand that, you understand the real trap. The worst job in Rome is also the safest place to hide. Because once the state marks you as useful, it keeps you alive. Until it doesn't. Rome does not announce itself as a monster. It announces itself as a system. On your first week inside the prison, you stop thinking in days. You think in queues. A line of men shuffling forward, a line of buckets going back, a line of orders moving down a corridor like water through a pipe. The place breathes on schedules you don't control, and once you learn the rhythm, you understand the real purpose of this building. It isn't built to hold people, it's built to process them. Every morning starts the same way. Keys, footsteps, the scrape of bolts. Guards don't yell because they don't have to. Noise is expensive. Routine is cheaper. A prisoner is brought out half awake, wrists raw where iron has kissed him too long. Another is dragged because he can't walk. Another walks too calmly, and everyone watches him with suspicion, because calm in this place usually means either innocence or a plan. You're assigned the jobs nobody praises, but everybody needs. Water, rags, lime, rope. You learn the difference between clean and acceptable. Clean is impossible. Acceptable means the corridor won't stink so much that the guards complain. Acceptable means the stone won't be slick enough to cause a fall, because a fall is paperwork, and paperwork is annoyance. Rome hates annoyance more than it hates suffering. The prison has its own geography of fear. There are doors the guards slam, doors they lock twice, and doors they don't touch unless they absolutely have to. Doors that feel heavy even when they're open, as if the air inside them has weight. At first you think you're imagining it. Then you watch a hardened guard, one who laughs at beaten men, avoid stepping fully across a threshold. He leans in, speaks quickly, then steps back as if the room might spit. That's when you understand. Even within Rome's violence, there are ranks. Some violence is public and celebrated. Some violence is necessary and denied. Your work takes you close enough to see the tools without being allowed to name them. Wooden frames, metal hooks, implements designed not for killing, but for persuasion. The point is not to end a body. The point is to make the body cooperate while it's still alive. There's a word Rome likes for this. Not cruelty, not sadism, something cleaner, something official. Truth. But you learn quickly that truth here is not discovered. It is manufactured. You see it in the way questions are asked. Not what happened, but say you did it. Not who was involved, but name someone. Not why, but again, louder, clearer. The shape of the confession is decided before the prisoner opens his mouth. The prisoner is simply the last material needed to finish the product. And products need quality control. You watch men come out of rooms trembling, swearing to gods they didn't believe in yesterday. You watch others come out silent, eyes empty, as if something essential has been peeled away. Sometimes they collapse. Sometimes they don't. Either way, the guards mark something down. A note, a nod, a decision. No one calls it an execution yet. They call it procedure. This is how the empire stays beautiful, by keeping its ugliness behind doors, then exporting the result as order. One day you're scrubbing a blood-dark stain from stone when the corridor changes. A hush spreads, not from kindness, but from anticipation. Guards stand straighter. A clerk gathers tablets like he's preparing for inspection. Even the prisoners sense it. They stop rattling chains. They stop whispering. Silence becomes a prayer. He arrives without spectacle. A man of average height, broad through the shoulders, dressed plainly, but with the authority of someone who doesn't need decoration. His face is not dramatic. That's what makes it worse. No theatrical scars, no villain's grin, just a patient expression, like a craftsman about to begin work. The guards don't greet him like a friend. They greet him like weather, something inevitable. He looks at you once, just once, and you feel your stomach drop as if you've been called by name in a place where names don't exist. The carnifex doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't waste breath. He simply points at the stain you're failing to remove and speaks with mild irritation, like you've done your job poorly. And that's the moment you understand the rules here. You thought you were safe because you were useful. You're not safe. You're temporarily not inconvenient. The carnifex walks past you, and you catch something you didn't expect. The way the guards relax after he passes, like they've handed off responsibility for the worst part of their day. They don't love him. They need him. He is the boundary between their conscience and their orders. That's his real job, not torture, moral laundering. He keeps the state's hands clean by making his own hands filthy. After that day, small changes happen. You are reassigned without explanation. You are told to stand near certain doors, to carry certain things, to wait and not speak. The carnifex never says, "I'm training you." He doesn't have to. Training begins the moment your body learns to obey without question. You watch him work, and you learn why Rome hates him. He is too honest. He doesn't pretend. He doesn't call it justice. He calls it what it is: compliance. He understands the psychology like a mathematician. Fear needs timing. Pain needs escalation. Hope needs to be offered and removed. A prisoner must believe there is a way out, then discover the only way out is to say what Rome wants. He doesn't improvise. He follows a logic. That logic changes you. At first you flinch at every scream, then you flinch less. Then you stop flinching and start listening, because listening keeps you alive. You start recognizing patterns. The moment a prisoner's voice cracks, the moment their pride breaks, the moment they begin bargaining with reality. You hate yourself for noticing. Then you hate yourself for becoming good at it. Because one evening, the carnifex stops in front of you and does something that feels like a sentence. He hands you a tool, not a blade, not yet. Something smaller, something meant to begin, not end. And he says, quietly, as if discussing chores, "Your turn." You look at the prisoner in the room, eyes wide, wrists bound, mouth already forming the shape of a denial, and you realize the Empire has finally moved you from assistant to instrument. If you refuse, you die. If you obey, you live, at the cost of becoming the thing Rome needs you to be. And the worst part is this: Rome will still despise you for it. So the question sharpens, tighter now, more personal. When an empire forces you to do evil to survive, who is the real author of the crime? The first time you hold the instrument, you learn something. Rome never teaches in its temples. Your hands are not the only thing that can be dirtied. The prisoner is bound to a post, not because he is dangerous, because the room demands it. Bound bodies make the process smoother. Smoothness is the prison's version of mercy. The guard beside you doesn't look at the prisoner's face. He watches your face, not with concern, with calculation. He's measuring whether you'll vomit, whether you'll hesitate, whether you'll make trouble. Rome hates trouble. The carnifex stands behind you like a shadow that has learned to speak. He doesn't coach you with kindness. He coaches you the way an artisan corrects an apprentice, precise, impatient, bored by moral drama. Start small, he says, not because you feel sorry, because you want him talking before he's broken. You don't want to understand that sentence, but your body does. Your body understands survival faster than your conscience can argue. Your hand moves. The prisoner jerks. The room fills with that sound. The sound a person makes when they realize pain is not a threat anymore. It's a schedule. You stop after a heartbeat, shaking, expecting the carnifex to praise you or mock you. He does neither. He watches the prisoner's breathing and nods once, as if he's checked a number on a tablet. Again, he says. This is how Rome creates monsters. Not with rage, with repetition. Afterward, you wash your hands until your skin burns, and it changes nothing. You can still feel the tool in your grip like it has left a fingerprint inside your bones. You think the guards will look at you differently. They do. But not the way you expect. They don't look at you with fear or respect. They look at you the way people look at something necessary and disgusting. A latrine that must exist. A carcass that must be dragged away. They step around you in the corridor as if your proximity might stain them. That's when you begin to understand who the carnifex really is. He is not simply the man who tortures. He is the empire's scapegoat in uniform. Because Rome cannot admit what it is. It has too many marble words: virtue, order, justice, civilization. Those words are fragile. They crack if you hold them too close to a screaming human body. So Rome keeps distance. It creates roles that absorb the shame. It appoints a person whose job is to be hated, so everyone else can feel clean. The carnifex is that person. He is officially part of the machinery. Keys open for him, doors make space for him. But socially, he is exiled while standing in the center of the state. People call him necessary and treat him like disease. They want him near when they need a confession. They want him gone the second the confession exists. Even the guards, men who break bones for a paycheck, don't want his life. They want his function without his curse. You see it in small moments. A clerk passes in the hallway and stops speaking when the carnifex approaches, as if words themselves might be contaminated. A junior guard makes the sign against bad luck under his cloak, and doesn't realize you saw. A prisoner spits on the ground near the carnifex's feet, not because it will help him, but because the only power left to a doomed man is to choose where to aim his contempt. The carnifex doesn't react. He has lived inside contempt so long it has become his climate. One night, you're sent on an errand outside the prison with a guard escort, carrying a sealed bundle that smells like old iron and oil. The city at night is a different Rome, softer, more dangerous, filled with men who laugh too loudly, and women who watch too carefully. Your escort keeps his hand near his knife, not because he fears criminals, because he fears being seen with you. When you return, you take a side route, through a service gate, past a lane where the stones are slick with spilled wine, and worse. The guard mutters that you shouldn't be here, not in the proper streets. You ask what he means. He hesitates, then answers like it's obvious. People like the carnifex don't belong among decent citizens. They live on the edge, outside, beyond the proud heart of the city. not because the law forgets them, because the law places them there. That's the genius of Rome's hypocrisy. It uses you, then removes you from view, so the public can believe violence is an exception instead of more of a foundation. Back inside the prison, the carnifex continues your training like it's inevitable. He teaches you things you hate learning, and once learned, can't unlearn. He teaches you that pain is not the point. Control is the point. He teaches you to watch for pride, because pride is where resistance lives. He teaches you to offer water, then take it away, to make the prisoner feel the empire as a god, capable of giving, capable of withholding, always watching. He teaches you that the cleanest torture is the kind that leaves no obvious marks, because Rome loves plausible deniability. A bruised face is a story. A quiet confession is a document. Most of all, he teaches you the prison's true religion. The confession must fit the accusation, not the other way around. At first you tell yourself you're only doing it because you have to. Then you catch yourself anticipating the next step. Then you catch yourself correcting someone else. That's when the sickness becomes real. The system is no longer using your body. It is rewriting your mind. And the carnifex, this hated, needed man, seems to know exactly when that rewrite completes. One morning, he is called away abruptly. No explanation, no warning. A whisper travels through the corridors like smoke. Someone important has fallen out of favor. Someone connected to power. Someone whose name makes officials suddenly careful. The guards move faster. The clerks carry more tablets. The prison shifts into a higher gear. The carnifex returns late, face unreadable, and speaks to you with a flatness that feels like a funeral. Today, he says, the rules will bend. He doesn't explain which rules. He doesn't have to. Because a few hours later, they drag in a prisoner who does not look like the others. His hands are softer. His posture is straighter. His eyes hold a kind of outrage that only men with status can afford. And behind him, shuffling, terrified, are his wife and children. You stare at them, and the floor seems to tilt under you. This isn't the estate anymore. This isn't private cruelty. This is the state reaching upward, touching families it normally pretends are protected. The guard whispers a single word that tightens the air like a noose. Treason. The wife clutches her children like she can still negotiate with reality. The children don't understand the word treason, but they understand the room. They understand the smell. Old fear, old blood, old stone that has heard too many promises break. The man tries to stand between them and the guards, because dignity is the last thing status ever truly owns. A guard laughs and pulls him aside as if moving furniture. This is when you learn the deepest difference between farm slavery and state violence. On the estate, cruelty is about productivity. Here, cruelty is about narrative. The state doesn't need this man to be guilty. It needs him to be legible. It needs his confession to fit an accusation already circulating through marble corridors. Treason is not simply a crime in Rome. Treason is a tool that reshapes the political weather. When the air turns cold, people die so the temperature can be explained. A clerk arrives with a tablet. That detail changes everything. Because the moment writing enters the room, pain becomes official. The clerk doesn't look at the prisoners. He looks at the space between them, at the angles of bodies, at how much time a process should take. He wets the stylus, tests the wax, and waits like a man waiting for a shipment. This is what you are serving now. Not a punishment, but a production line. The prison is not a place where truth is discovered. It is a place where truth is manufactured in a format the court can accept. The carnifex watches the man's face with calm interest. He doesn't ask, "Did you do it?" He asks questions shaped like traps, questions with the answer already baked inside. Who approached you? Where did you meet? Which message did you carry? Not because he's curious, because once the accused repeats details, even invented ones, the empire can call it evidence. The state loves details. Details make lies feel expensive, like something too intricate to be fake. The man refuses. He says he's innocent. He says he never conspired. He says he doesn't even know what he's being accused of. He demands to see a magistrate. He demands to speak as a citizen. The guards stare at him like he's speaking an ancient language no one uses anymore. The carnifex turns to you and speaks quietly, not as advice, but as doctrine. He still thinks this is a conversation. Then the work begins. At first, it's almost gentle in its restraint. Not mercy, strategy. The empire needs the prisoner alive long enough to sign his own destruction. Pain is applied like pressure on a seal, enough to leave an impression, not enough to crack the wax. You watch the carnifex pace the suffering. Pause, ask again. Increase. Pause, ask again. It's not rage, it's calculation. He is not punishing a man, he is editing a man. You learn the real economy of torture. It is cheaper than investigation. Investigation requires time, witnesses, risk. Investigations can expose the wrong people. Torture is efficient. Torture creates clarity on demand. It produces a confession that neatly matches political needs. It turns uncertainty into a single document the court can file, cite, and forget. And the empire, this is the part nobody likes admitting, runs on administrative convenience. Rome is so large, it cannot afford moral complexity. The machine needs simple outputs. Guilty, not guilty. Executed, confiscated, erased. The man holds out longer than you expect. Pride is a sturdy thing. He tries to protect his family by refusing the script. He thinks if he endures, the truth will matter. But the prison is built to break that belief first. They deny water. They deny rest. They control time until time itself becomes torture. Hours blur. The man's voice changes from outrage to bargaining. Bargaining becomes pleading. Pleading becomes silence. The carnifex nods, patient, as if he's been waiting for a predictable turn in a predictable process. Then the state brings the family closer. This is the psychological blade Rome prefers because it cuts cleanly. It makes the victim do the work of destroying himself. The wife is shoved forward. She is told to speak. When she refuses, the questions begin again. The same shape, the same trap. The children watch their parents transform from people into targets. You realize, with a chill that settles in your teeth, why the family is here. not as collateral, as leverage. The empire is teaching a lesson. You do not resist alone. Your resistance will be billed to everyone you love. The clerk scratches the stylus into wax, recording fragments as if the room is a market and suffering is the commodity being priced. You want to look away. You don't. Looking away is how you die. The carnifex leans toward you. You understand now? He asks. Understand what? That law is not the opposite of violence. Law is the language violence uses to become respectable. When the man finally breaks, it isn't dramatic. It's small. A nod. A whispered sentence. A name offered like a bribe to the gods. The clerk's hand moves faster. The guards relax. The room exhales. Not because the truth has been found, because the paperwork has been secured. That is the prison's definition of success. And then comes the next stage, the part that makes you hate the empire more than the pain does. The man is not treated as someone who suffered. He is treated as someone who provided a service. A confession is an object Rome can carry into court and display. The trial will not be a search for reality. It will be a performance built on the document you helped create. The carnifex looks at you with something that almost resembles pity, and it's the most frightening thing he's ever shown. Now, he says, you'll see why people like us are necessary. Necessary for what? For Rome to keep its marble hands clean while its prisons do the speaking. Outside these walls, a name is being erased in the highest circles, one that makes senators tremble and old alliances rot overnight. And when that kind of name falls, the prison doesn't ask whether you're guilty. It asks whether you're useful to the story. You stare at the wife, at the children, at the clerk sealing the tablet like a coffin lid, and you realize the case isn't ending, it's beginning. Because once treason becomes a tool, it doesn't stop with enemies. It spreads to anyone the empire can afford to sacrifice. The trial happens 2 weeks later, and by the time it begins, the verdict already has a shape. That's the hidden luxury of power. It can decide first and perform later. You don't attend the court as a spectator. You attend it as evidence, not your testimony, your work. The confession tablet is carried like a sacred object, as if wax and stylus can baptize pain into truth. Senators sit in clean robes and speak in polished phrases about duty, safety, the republic's dignity. They don't mention the prison, they don't mention the nights without water. They don't mention the wife's wrists bruised from being dragged forward like leverage. Rome's genius is not that it lies, it's that it makes the lie feel formal. The accused man stands there looking smaller than he did in the cell, not because he lost height, but because his mind has been taught what resistance costs. He reads his confession with a voice that doesn't sound like his own. Every sentence is a surrender disguised as admission. Every detail is a nail hammered into his life. He pauses once, as if about to deviate from the script, and you see the guards shift, the way a room shifts when it's ready to correct a mistake. He continues. His wife is brought in after him. Her eyes are dry now, not calm, emptied. The children are kept close enough to be visible, far enough to be controlled. That distance is deliberate. Rome understands theatre. It understands that fear spreads better when it is witnessed. And then you hear the phrase that matters more than any confession: treason against the emperor. Not treason against the state, not treason against law, treason against a person. This is the switch that flips everything. The moment the emperor's safety becomes the center, rules are no longer limits. They become tools. Torture isn't an emergency measure. It becomes a shortcut, a legal exception that eats the law from the inside. You see it in the faces of the men deciding the case. They aren't furious. They aren't even interested in the accused. They are interested in their own safety. How quickly they can align themselves with the new climate, how cleanly they can distance themselves from whoever is falling. Because the real engine of treason trials is not justice. It is panic. A rumor in Rome can ruin an entire bloodline. A whispered association becomes a charge. A dinner invitation becomes complicity. A polite greeting becomes betrayal. In this kind of system, innocence isn't a shield. It's a delay. The accused is condemned. The wife is condemned. The children, Rome's most honest cruelty, are condemned by implication. No long debate, no philosophical agony, just procedural confidence. A state that knows it can always justify itself later. After court, the crowd is already waiting. That's the part you struggle to explain to yourself. How quickly people gather when blood is promised. How the city that builds temples to virtue also builds appetite for suffering. Some come for excitement. Some come because attendance is a form of obedience. Some come because watching proves you are not the one being watched. They don't chant the emperor's name. They chant for punishment. They chant for certainty. It's easier to live in a world where the guilty are obvious. You are ordered to make it slow. And now the empire reveals its final hypocrisy. The same people who demand harshness will despise the hands that deliver it. You drag the condemned forward. The man's legs tremble. The wife tries to keep her chin lifted. The children stare like their minds cannot accept what their eyes are seeing. You know what the crowd wants. A quick death is unsatisfying. A quick death doesn't teach anything. Rome's executions are not only about removing bodies. They're about shaping behavior. So you do what the state trained you to do. You carry out the sentence in the way Rome prefers, drawn out enough to be remembered, controlled enough to be called order. You can feel the crowd lean in and then recoil and then lean in again like a single creature feeding. When it's over, the noise doesn't stop. It just changes flavor. The same mouths that cheered now spit insults. Someone throws something that hits your shoulder and falls harmlessly to the dust. Another curses you. Not the officials, not the senators, not the emperor. You. Because the state is too large to hate safely. But a man with blood on his hands is an easy target. That is the bargain Rome offers its citizens. You can condemn cruelty while consuming it as long as you blame the executioner. You return to the prison at dusk, and the corridors greet you with their familiar cold. You expect relief. You feel none. You wash your hands until your skin splits, and the smell still clings, not to your fingers, but to your memory. You lie down on stone, and for the first time since the estate, you want to cry, not from pain, but from disgust. And then the next day, the machine continues. More prisoners arrive, not thieves, not murderers. People with respectable haircuts and softer hands. Men who look like they once argued in forums and enjoyed warm meals. Their charges are identical in spirit and vague in detail. Conspiracy, disloyalty, association. The emperor's paranoia has become policy. You start hearing the name that causes doors to close faster and clerks to write more carefully. Sejanus. A man who was once too close to the throne. A man whose fall has turned into a purge. The city speaks his name like a disease. Quietly, quickly, as if saying it too loud might invite accusation. And suddenly, you understand the true function of these trials. They are not about punishing a conspiracy. They are about demonstrating that no protection exists. Not rank, not wealth, not childhood. One evening, a guard tells you a story while chewing bread. He says it like gossip, like entertainment, like something that happened to strangers, so it doesn't count as horror. He mentions Sejanus's children, how even they were taken, even they were destroyed, and how their bodies were thrown, where Rome throws people it wants to erase. You don't ask for details, but the image arrives anyway. Small bodies, a public lesson, a city learning that the emperor's fear is stronger than any family bond. And that's when your big question sharpens into something unbearable. If Rome can turn treason into permission, and permission into spectacle, what stops it from using the same machinery on anyone it needs to silence next? Once a name becomes toxic in Rome, it doesn't sink quietly. It poisons the ground. It spreads into paperwork, into whispers, into the way men suddenly stop greeting each other in public. Sejanus is that kind of name now. The prison starts receiving bodies that don't match the usual rhythm. These aren't criminals scraped from alleyways. They are men with educated hands, men who still try to stand straight even in chains because posture is the last habit their status gives them. Their accusations come in the same vague shape: association, sympathy, messages, knowledge. Nothing you could weigh, nothing you could prove. But treason doesn't need proof the way theft does. Treason is a story the state tells about fear. And Rome is very good at stories. You see how the machine adapts. The clerks arrive earlier. The guards double-check locks. The corridor becomes quieter, not from mercy, but from caution. Everyone senses the same thing. When politics is burning, the prison becomes an extension of the fire. People like to imagine terror as chaos. But what you're watching is organization. There is a quota of certainty Rome must produce. There is a timetable. There are officials who want clean outcomes they can cite without risking their own necks. And there is a public that needs to be reminded, periodically, that safety is conditional. That's the real purpose of spectacle. Not entertainment, but calibration. A crowd is not a mind. It's a weather system. It turns violent when the state gives it permission, and it turns obedient when the state gives it fear. In the middle of this, the prison receives a rumor that lands like a stone in your stomach. Sejanus's children. People in the corridors tell it the way they tell market gossip, half pleased, half horrified, as if repeating it proves they're on the right side of history. They say the children were not spared. They were taken because the empire needed a full stop, not a comma. They say the bodies were disposed of publicly, thrown where Rome throws people it wants to erase. Not a burial, not a mourning, an absence. And the detail that follows is the one that makes your blood feel cold. The girl was too young to fit the state's own ritual categories. Rome had rules even for killing. So the system bent those rules in the ugliest way possible. not to reduce suffering, but to satisfy a technicality before strangling her anyway. That's what law can become when it serves power instead of restraining it. Not a shield, but a set of steps, a checklist, a procedure that turns atrocity into compliance. You don't know if every detail is true. You only know the function of the story is true. Rome wants you to hear it. Rome wants everyone to hear it. Because the message isn't Sejanus was guilty. The message is, your children won't save you. Once that message settles into the city's bones, the prison doesn't need extra guards. People start policing themselves. Friends stop visiting. Neighbors stop speaking. Senators stop remembering conversations. The empire saves money by outsourcing terror to the imagination. Inside the prison, the cases become faster. Not because the state has become efficient, because it has become impatient. The confessions don't need to be convincing anymore. They only need to exist. You see the same pattern repeat: denial, hunger, exhaustion, pain, confession. Not truth, confession. The clerks write, the guards escort, the court performs, the crowd consumes, the bodies disappear. And every time it happens, you feel the same disgust rise, then flatten into something more dangerous: normality. That's how complicity is built. Not with a moment of evil. With 1,000 moments of I can't change it. It's not my decision. I just follow orders. The empire doesn't demand you love what you do. It only demands you keep doing it. Then, one morning, the machine stutters. It's subtle at first. Guards whisper instead of bark. A door stays locked longer than usual. A clerk waits with his stylus, hovering as if he's been told to hold. You feel tension on everyone's skin like sweat before a storm. The carnifex is late. That shouldn't matter. But it does. Because the prison's darkest rooms don't run without him. Not because no one else is capable, but because he is the designated sin. He is the state's filth collector. Without him, the violence becomes too obviously shared. Hours pass. The prisoners wait. The guards shift uneasily. Then an official arrives, cleaner than the guards, more controlled than fear should allow. He speaks quietly with the senior guard and leaves without looking around, like he doesn't want the prison's air on him. After he goes, the rumor starts. A purge, not a riot, not an accident. A purge in the upper circles. Names being crossed out, allies collapsing, men disappearing into the same machinery they once directed from above. And the carnifex, your mentor, your shadow, the man Rome despises and depends on, has been caught in it. You understand immediately why that's plausible. The carnifex hears too much. He touches secrets. He processes the state's panic into confessions. If the emperor is cleaning house, why keep a man who knows where the bodies came from? In Rome, being useful does not make you safe. It makes you available. By evening, the senior guard calls you into the corridor. He doesn't ask you to sit. He doesn't soften his tone. He treats it like a reassignment, like moving a tool from one shelf to another. You'll take his place, he says. For a second, you don't understand. Your mind tries to reject the sentence, but the prison is already adjusting around it. Keys jingle. Doors open. Clerks glance at you differently. More attentive. Less human. Guards stop treating you like a helper and start treating you like a hazard. That is how Rome crowns its monsters. Without ceremony, without witnesses, without any admission that it has created one. You want to refuse. And you realize, with a clarity so sharp it almost feels like relief, that refusal isn't part of the system. Because the prison doesn't promote you for skill, it promotes you because you are replaceable, and the machine cannot stop. Now the question changes again, more intimate, more lethal. If the empire can discard its executioner the moment he becomes inconvenient, what do you think it will do to you once you've done enough of its dirty work to become a liability? They give you no new title, no badge, no ritual, just a keyring that feels heavier than iron should, and a corridor that suddenly belongs to you. That is Rome's way of making power feel normal. It hands you authority like it's a chore. The first case under your promotion arrives before you've slept. The prisoner is not a thief, not a killer, not a rebel caught with a sword. He is a man accused of being near the wrong person at the wrong time, an offense that only exists in an empire where fear is policy. You don't need to be told what Rome wants. You can read it in the questions the guards feed you, in the blank wax tablets waiting on the clerk's lap, in the impatient posture of the officials who want a confession or like they want a receipt. You begin the process the way you were trained, slowly at first, not from mercy, but from strategy. Pain works better when the prisoner still believes there's a way to end it. You offer water, then remove it. You offer rest, then interrupt it. You let him feel time stretching like a rope around his throat. When he denies, you don't argue, you repeat. When he begs, you don't comfort, you repeat. When he breaks, you don't celebrate, you record. The confession comes, messy, contradictory, desperate, but it comes. And that is all Rome needs. Because the court is not a room where the truth is discovered. It's a room where the state displays the truth it already decided. The confession is the costume. The verdict is the script. The spectators are the reason. They schedule the execution quickly, while the city still remembers why it's supposed to be afraid. On the day of it, you are marched through streets filled with faces, thousands of them, drawn by a hunger that pretends to be righteousness. Some shout insults at the condemned, some shout at you, some shout at both. They don't know which part they hate more, the traitor who threatens their safety, or the executioner who reminds them what their safety costs. You look at the crowd and understand the most cynical truth of all. Most people aren't brave enough to oppose cruelty, but they're eager to participate in it when it's legal. Legality is the mask that lets them feel clean. The condemned man is brought out, and the crowd roars as if a play has begun. And maybe it has. Rome's executions are not merely about removal. They're about instruction. Every public death is a lesson delivered with volume. A guard leans in close and gives you the order, the same one you heard before, now spoken as if it's tradition. Make it slow. Not because the state is angry, because slow deaths speak longer. They linger in memory. They turn into rumors that discipline men who never saw the blade. The condemned man looks at you with a kind of hatred that is almost pure, not because you accused him, not because you wrote his confession, but because you are the only face of the system he's allowed to touch. That's the design. Rome keeps itself faceless. So you do it. You carry out the sentence as directed, controlled, deliberate, public. You feel the crowd surge and recoil in waves, fascinated, disgusted, hungry, relieved. You can see it on them, the way they lean forward like the suffering is pulling them by the throat, the way they step back as if disgust might save them from responsibility. When it's finished, the noise doesn't stop. It changes direction. Someone spits near your feet. Another throws a pebble. A woman screams a curse at you with a passion she did not spend on the men who ordered this death. A boy mimics the condemned man's final sounds and laughs until his father slaps him, not in moral correction, but in fear that the laughter might be noticed. You want to grab one of them and ask, where were you when the confession was manufactured? Where were you when the guards dragged his family through the corridor? Where were you when the state decided his guilt before he spoke? But you already know the answer. They weren't there, and Rome designed it that way. Because the easiest way to keep a population obedient is to give them a single target they can hate safely. Not the emperor, not the senators, not the courts, the executioner, the one who makes violence visible, the one who can be punished socially while the system stays untouched. That's why your job is both necessary and despised. You are the empire's moral sponge. You absorb the filth so everyone else can feel dry. Back in the prison, the guards avoid your eyes more than ever. They speak to you politely now, but it's not respect. It's distance, like you're contagious. You notice that even the clerks, men who enjoy the safety of writing rather than doing, keep their hands close to their robes when you pass, as if the air around you might stain fabric. At night, you lie on stone and discover a new kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being enslaved, but the loneliness of being necessary. Rome has made you into something it can use and reject at the same time. And then the cases keep coming. Real conspirators, maybe. Innocent men, certainly. The machine doesn't care. The machine isn't built for truth. It's built for throughput. Confession, trial, spectacle, disposal. Confession, trial, spectacle, disposal. You stop counting. And as you stop counting, something else happens. The city begins to forget the officials who ordered these deaths and remember only the man who carried them out. Your name becomes a whisper in corridors, a superstition, a warning. Guards joke about you to prove they aren't afraid. Prisoners pray you never learn their names. You realize the final cruelty of your position. Rome has given you survival in exchange for becoming a symbol it can sacrifice whenever it needs to look righteous again. That is when the thought first forms, not as courage, but as a reflex of self-preservation. Leave. Not because you believe you can live free, because you know what Rome does to tools that become too visible. And now the open loop tightens like a noose. If the empire keeps producing executioners it can hate, what happens when the executioner decides he won't be Rome's shield anymore? You plan your escape the way a prisoner plans prayer, quietly, repeatedly, knowing the act itself might be punished even before it succeeds. It isn't heroic, it isn't clever, it's desperate arithmetic. You've seen what happens to men who resist openly. They become examples. You've seen what happens to men who resist privately. They disappear. So, you aim for the smallest kind of rebellion, the kind the machine might overlook. A door left unlatched, a guard bribed with a favor, a shift change timed with the city's noise. But Rome is built to detect motion. The empire doesn't survive because it controls every individual. It survives because it controls the paths people can take. Roads, gates, paperwork, patrols, informers. You can run, but you cannot outrun infrastructure. You wait for a night when the prison feels slightly looser, when the guards are bored, when the corridors are too quiet, when the city outside is loud with drinking and distraction. You hide a small bundle, bread, a scrap of cloth, whatever you can steal without creating a visible gap. You keep your face blank during the day so no one sees the future forming behind your eyes. Then, after midnight, you move. The first steps are the most terrifying because they feel possible. Your heart pounds so hard, you're certain it can be heard through stone. You slip through a service corridor you've cleaned 100 times. You pass a door you once feared. You avoid a stair that squeaks. The prison's darkness wraps you like a cloak, and for a moment you feel something you haven't felt in years. Choice. You reach an outer gate. The lock is old. The key turns with a soft click. The night air hits your face. Cool, sharp, alive. The city's sounds are distant here. You can smell smoke and wet stone and the faint sweetness of something baking somewhere. For a heartbeat, it feels like the world is not a cage. Then the rope tightens. Not a literal rope, a system rope. A voice barks behind you. Boots scrape. A lantern flares, and your shadow stretches long on the wall like a man trying to outrun himself. You sprint anyway. You don't even know where you're running, only that standing still is death. You make it to an alley. You turn a corner. You crash into someone, hard. And for a split second, you think you've collided with a drunk. But the hands that grab you are too steady. They slam you to the ground. More guards surge in like they were already waiting. The lantern light blooms across their faces, and you see it. Not surprise, not confusion, expectation. You weren't discovered by chance. You were caught by design. They chain you before you can speak. They don't ask why you ran. Rome doesn't care why. Why is a luxury for free men. You are dragged back through streets where night travelers glance at you and quickly look away. Nobody intervenes. Nobody asks questions. A captured man is not a tragedy here. He's a reminder. When the prison door shuts behind you again, it feels louder than any scream you've ever heard. The senior guard meets you in the corridor with a tired expression, like you've created paperwork. He doesn't look angry. He looks inconvenienced. That terrifies you more than rage would. Escape, he says, as if reading a label. That means execution. You know. You've always known. It's written into the air of this place. Then comes the twist that makes your stomach turn. They don't bring the carnifex's tools for a quick end. They don't drag you straight to the yard. They don't even kill you the way Rome kills ordinary prisoners. They do something more instructive. They assign your execution to someone else. an apprentice, your apprentice. The boy, no, not a boy anymore, stands in the doorway to the torture room holding an instrument, like it weighs more than his arms can carry. His face is tight, eyes darting, breathing shallow. He looks at you the way you once looked at the carnifex, with fear, with awe, with the desperate need to obey and survive. In that moment, you understand the prison's final cruelty. It isn't just going to kill you, it's going to reproduce you. The guards strap you down the same way you strapped others down. The leather bites, the wood presses into your spine. The room smells the same, your room, your kingdom, your grave. Your apprentice steps closer, hands trembling. He doesn't want to do it. Or maybe he does and hates that part of himself. Either way, the system doesn't care. It needs him to learn. It needs him to cross the line so he can never return. You could beg, some part of you wants to. Another part of you knows begging is just another performance Rome won't reward. You look into his eyes and see yourself in them. Young, trapped, terrified. So, you give him the only mercy you can. Don't hesitate, you whisper. If you hesitate, they'll kill you with me. It's not a threat, it's instruction. It's the most honest thing you've said in years. His jaw tightens, his eyes harden. He nods once, small, like the start of a sentence. Then the night begins. Pain arrives in measured steps, the way you taught it to. Not chaotic, not emotional, controlled, escalating, efficient. Your body screams before your mind can decide whether screaming is allowed. Your throat burns, your vision blurs. Time becomes a thick, sticky thing. And the entire time the guards watch not with horror, but with approval. Because this is not just punishment. This is training. By dawn, you are barely alive. Your skin feels like it doesn't belong to you anymore. You try to find something soft in your memory. Your mother's face, sunlight on fields, a taste of bread that wasn't rationed. But the prison has eaten those things. Rome has taken even your ability to comfort yourself. You understand now what you really were in the empire's eyes. A tool. And tools that try to walk away are broken publicly, so other tools don't get ideas. As the sun rises, your apprentice stands over you, and for the first time, he doesn't look like a frightened boy. He looks like a function. And the open loop closes tighter. If Rome can turn a slave into an executioner, and then into an example, what was the law ever for, except to make the machine feel righteous? Morning light doesn't soften anything in a Roman prison. It only makes the details clearer. You wake in fragments. Pain first, then sound, then the slow realization that you are still here. Your mouth tastes like metal. Your hands feel far away, like they belong to someone else. Every breath drags through your ribs as if your chest is lined with splinters. The guards don't look relieved you survived the night. They look pleased. Survival in this place is not mercy. It's timing. They want you conscious for the final act. They want your death to be clean enough to count as order after the mess of the lesson. The prison has always preferred endings that look deliberate. A planned death tells a better story than a dead body that arrived too early. The senior guard enters with the same bored face he wore the night you were captured. He reads your condition like a clerk reads a shipment, checking what's broken, What still functions? What can be used one last time? Enough, he says, not because he pities you, because the script requires a conclusion. They pull you up, half carrying your weight. Your feet scrape the stone, leaving a thin smear that will later be scrubbed away by another boy who thinks he can stay invisible. You pass cells where prisoners stare through gaps in wood and iron, eyes wide, silent. Nobody speaks. They don't want to be noticed. They don't want to be chosen. They don't want your fate to become contagious. You realize the prison has already won something important. It has turned you into a warning without needing to say a word. They bring you to a smaller chamber, less like a workshop, more like an office, where death is finalized. A place that feels administrative. That's what Rome loves most. Killing that can pretend to be routine. Your apprentice is waiting. He stands straighter now. His hands are steadier. The instrument he holds is different this time. Final, simple, efficient. No artistry, no steps, just an end. He doesn't look at the guards. He looks at you. And in his eyes, you see the Empire's real education. Not how to hurt, but how to stop feeling responsible for hurting. The prison has taught him the sacred lie that keeps all systems of violence alive. I had no choice. For a moment, something breaks through your numbness. Not fear, not even regret, recognition. You remember the first time you watched the carnifex work and told yourself, I would never become that. You remember the first time you touched a tool and felt your soul recoil. You remember how fast recoil becomes habit, and habit becomes skill, and skill becomes a life you can't step out of without being killed. Rome didn't make you evil. Rome made you functional, and now it's doing the same to him, right in front of you. The senior guard speaks like he's closing an account. Sentence: carried out. No one mentions escape as a human desire. It's labeled as a violation, a malfunction. A tool tried to leave the toolbox. The apprentice steps closer. His face is tight, not cruel. He still has a corner of humanity left, enough to feel sick, not enough to disobey. You should hate him. You try. But the hatred slides off and lands where it belongs, on the system that taught you both the same lesson with different hands. You want to say something profound, something that redeems you. But redemption is another luxury Rome doesn't grant. So you say the only honest thing. Do it clean, you whisper. The apprentice swallows. His eyes flicker to the guards. They stare back, unblinking. Their silence is the pressure. Their presence is the rule. He understands what you understood years ago. If he hesitates, he becomes the next lesson. He raises the weapon. Time slows, not because death is dramatic, but because your mind is searching for anything to hold on to. A face, a smell, a single soft memory that proves you were human once. You find your mother's hands for half a second, calloused, warm, briefly cupping your cheek when you were small enough to still believe touch could protect you. Then the memory fractures, swallowed by everything that came after. The underground air, the chains, the corridor screams, the confessions, the crowd's roar. Rome didn't just steal your life. It stole your ability to remember yourself without pain. The blade goes in. It isn't cinematic. It's practical. Your body jerks, then settles. The room doesn't gasp. The guards don't flinch. The apprentice's face stays frozen, like he's holding the last piece of himself in place. You try to speak. Only breath comes out, thin, uneven, like a door closing. And then, in the quiet between one heartbeat and the next, you finally understand the purest cruelty of your job. The Empire never needed you to be a villain. It needed you to be a container, a place where all the shame could be dumped. Because once the crowd spits at you instead of the senators, once the guards whisper your name instead of the emperor's, once the court waves a confession and calls it order, the system wins twice. It gets obedience, and it gets innocence by distance. You die not as a man, but as a function being retired. And that is the point. The apprentice steps back, breathing hard. He doesn't collapse. He doesn't cry. The prison would punish tears. The prison punishes hesitation, so it rewards stillness. The guards nod, satisfied, not because justice was served, but because continuity was preserved. The machine did not stop. The machine replaced a broken part. As your vision fades, you catch the last, unbearable twist. Rome will remember the emperor. Rome will remember the senators. Rome will remember the speeches about virtue. But the hands that did the work, your hands, will be forgotten on purpose. Because forgetting is how empires stay beautiful. And the open loop now hangs in the air like smoke that won't clear. If law can turn cruelty into routine, and routine into order, then what exactly was Rome's law protecting? People or power? The empire survives your death without a pause. That's the last lesson it wanted to teach. No mourning, no inquiry, no accounting of a human life. Your body is handled the way broken equipment is handled, removed, disposed of, replaced. Someone will scrub the floor where you bled. Someone will carry out the tools you once cleaned. Someone will stand in the same doorway you once feared, learning the same posture of obedience. And the city above will keep eating, praying, laughing, and applauding itself for being civilized. This is why it sucked to be a Roman executioner, not because the work was bloody. Rome had blood everywhere. Soldiers bled on borders. Gladiators bled in arenas. Slaves bled in fields. Blood alone wasn't the punishment. The punishment was what your job allowed everyone else to pretend. You were Rome's insulation layer. The empire of law needed violence the way a body needs digestion, constantly, invisibly, and without polite witnesses. But Rome's entire identity depended on calling itself ordered, rational, virtuous. That identity can't survive too much direct contact with screaming. So, Rome solved the problem with design. First, it built captivity into architecture. Not only walls around the city, but rooms under farms, corridors in prisons, doors that separated respectable life from the machinery that made respectable life possible. When suffering is tucked behind stone, cruelty stops looking like a choice and starts looking like a feature, like plumbing. Second, it standardized pain through procedure. This is what makes it so cold. Torture was not merely rage. It was scheduled, paced, recorded, transformed into a confession that could be carried into court like a certificate. Law did not abolish violence. It refined it, gave it vocabulary, sequence, justification. It turned a scream into a document and then called the document truth. Third, it used treason to break its own rules without admitting it. Rome's law was always loud about protecting rank, status, citizenship. But the moment the emperor's fear became policy, those protections became optional. Exception became a weapon, and once a weapon exists inside the law, it spreads. Because officials learn how useful it is. Because informers learn how profitable it is. Because crowds learn how comforting it is to see traitors dragged away instead of admitting the state is unstable. Sejanus was the perfect demonstration of this. One powerful man rises too close to the throne, then falls. And Rome doesn't just punish him. It punishes the idea of him. It punishes proximity. It punishes memory. It punishes family. The message is not about guilt. It's about control. Nothing protects you. Not your service, not your pedigree, not your children. That's what terror is for. In a sophisticated empire, not chaos, but discipline. Fourth, and this is the part the marble statues hide best, Rome outsourced the shame. It made sure the men who ordered violence could speak about virtue, without being contradicted by their own hands. It created a role that could be despised publicly while being required privately. That role absorbed the disgust. It gave citizens a safe target. It gave guards a way to feel not like him. It gave elites a way to wash their consciences with distance. The carnifex was not an accident of cruelty. He was a design solution. A state that wants to be feared and loved at the same time must do this. It must split its face in two. One face of law and grandeur, one face of filth and force. Then it must convince people the second face is a deviation, a necessary evil, a regrettable exception. But the executioner is never the exception. He is the evidence. And here is the answer to the big question, the one Rome tried to bury under procedure. Roman law did not exist primarily to protect people from power. It existed to make power legible, repeatable, and defensible. It was a language that allowed violence to be administered without looking like violence. It turned domination into routine, and routine into order. Once the ledger is written, the empire can point at the ink and claim innocence, because the decision looks official. That's why you were hated, not because you were uniquely monstrous, because you stood too close to the truth. When citizens spit on the executioner, they are buying a bargain, the pleasure of cruelty without the guilt of authorship. When senators condemn a traitor, they are buying a bargain, stability through sacrifice. When the emperor demands confessions, he is buying a bargain, obedience through fear. And the currency that pays for all of it is always the same: bodies, silenced bodies, replaceable bodies. So when people ask why it sucked to be a Roman executioner, they miss the sharper question: why did Rome need executioners at all, if it was truly the empire of law? Because law was never the opposite of violence. Law was how Rome taught violence to wear a toga.